With the permission of the chair, I would like to begin on Makar Sankranti, on this talk, which I have titled Hindus in Hindurastra, 8th class citizens and victims of state-sanctioned apartheid. Ever since Mahatma Gandhi succeeded in controlling this nation's pulse, we have witnessed minority appeasement on an unprecedented scale, sometimes as virtue signaling, at other times as placation of victimhood. To illustrate but one instance of the extent to which the great Mahatma was committed to realizing his vision, while preaching to those affected by the pre-partition Hindu-Muslim violence, he urged, and I quote, "Hindus should not harbor anger in their hearts against Muslims, even if the latter wanted to destroy them. Even if the Muslims want to kill us all, we should face death bravely. If they established their rule after killing all Hindus, we would be ushering in a new world by sacrificing our lives," unquote. Every time I pass on a currency note, the same Mahatma sniggers at me, as though perplexed why I haven't yet sacrificed my life to usher in a new world. Well, the Mahatma need not snigger. His vision stands realized. The new world has indeed been ushered in. Right from the Khilafat movement to the cushioning of the Mopla massacre, to the Rangila Rasool incident, to blatantly discriminatory state and central articles and amendments, to school curriculums, to Hajj subsidy, to ignoring the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act, to Shah Bano, to the declaration by a sitting prime minister that minorities have the first right to resources. Every single time the minority has been appeased, it has only emboldened their leaders and political fronts for further extortion and blackmail. This has come at enormous cost, not only to their own community, but sadly also to the Hindus. But the question is not of appeasement. Yes, appeasement is discriminatory. Of course it is. But worse than appeasement is the active discrimination against the community not being appeased. Worse than appeasement of one community is apartheid against the other community. Truth be told, appeasement may rankle. Sure it does. But Indians have learned to accept it, even take it in their stride and scoff at it, for they realize the reasons for appeasements are political. And those reasons are placation of vote banks in order to win elections. And every political party, cutting across ideologies and religious affiliations or labels, indulges in appeasement. So while our Muslim population is 14.2% by the official census, as many as 31.3% of homes under the Awas Yojana, 33% of funds under the Kisan Samman Nidhi Yojana, and 36% of loans under the Mudra Yojana in the last 8 years have gone to Muslims. The BJP government has a Pradhan Mantri Shadi Shagun scheme exclusively for Muslim girls who complete their graduation before marriage. They will get rupees 51,000, no questions asked. Housing, skilling, scholarships, sarkari jobs, salaries to Maulvis. There is appeasement and preferential treatment meted out to the minorities by every political party, including the BJP. Heck, the BJP recently even offered Christian senior citizens a free trip to Jerusalem if they voted for it. Fact is, Ram Rajya and Rom Rajya are interchangeable, depending upon which way the wind is blowing. No, the issue, I repeat, is not of appeasement. The issue is of apartheid. The issue is of state-sponsored, state-sanctioned discrimination against a particular community. And that community is the majority Hindu community. This lecture concerns not appeasement, but apartheid. It concerns not dignity, but discrimination that is now so entrenched in our constitution, our policies, our legal framework, our society, our psyche, that they make Hindus not just second-class citizens, but rather eighth-class citizens. That this is happening in this so-called Hindurastra is profoundly ironical. Here then, ladies and gentlemen, are 8 reasons why Hindus are 8th-class citizens in their own country. Number 1, state control of Hindu temples. State control of Hindu temples and their properties is by far the largest, financially most damaging scam of independent India. That it not only continues but flourishes under the Modi government is a sad reflection of how politicians in our country treat Hindus. Even using the petroleum sector as a cash cow pales in comparison to the loot and pillaging of Hindu temples. I don't know how and why. It is beyond the limits of comprehension of the flag bearers of secularism that if you truly believe that religion should keep out of state, the corollary is also equally applicable, that state should keep out of religion. But does it? Secularism is total separation of religion and state, total. And yet there are half a dozen articles and amendments and directive principles in our constitution that make it plural, not secular. In fact, the word secular was inserted in our preamble by Indira Gandhi during the emergency. It was absent from Ambedkar's constitution. Our state declares itself to be secular, but is shamelessly not so, regulating, governing, and controlling as it does Hindu places of worship. Hindu temples have been, for thousands of years, the centers of worship, of learning, of community living, of trade and economy, of statecraft, even defense. And every invader has known that to dismantle India, you need to dismantle first this temple ecosystem. And every invader has managed it. What sets the British apart is that they managed also to pass this dismantling on to those who they ruled and subjugated. And now the latter are continuing with the dismantling. Right from the Madras Regulation 7, 1817 to the Religious Endowments Act 1863 to the Religious and Charitable Endowments Act 1925 to the Hindu Religious and Endowments Act 1927 to Act 12, 1935 to the Post-Independence Hindu Religious and Charitable Endowments Act 1951, Hindus have been at the receiving end of state-sponsored loot and pillaging of their places of worship. And when the 1951 legislation was challenged in the High Court and subsequently the Supreme Court, and most of the draconian provisions of the 1951 Act struck down, the Congress that was in power then quickly passed the Hindu Religious and Charitable Endowments Act 1959, snubbing the court decree. 2 years ago, the Madras High Court dismissed a petition challenging the constitutional validity of this act, commenting that, quote, management of temples has got nothing to do with the right to worship. A Hindu can worship as much as he wants, unquote. But I ask you, if the Congress can bring in a legislation to control Hindu temples, one that still stands, why can't the BJP bring in a legislation to free Hindu temples? A petition by Swami Paramatma Nanda and Swami Dayanand Saraswati is pending in the Supreme Court since 2012, 10 years. They can allow midnight hearings for granting mercy to terrorists, but not here. In his plea, Swamiji gave the example of the grand Ardhanareshwara temple in Tiruchenagod, Tamil Nadu. Even though the temple generates more than 1 crore in annual income, the budget earmarked for conducting daily puja and performing rituals is a mere 1 lakh. Swami Dayanand Saraswati did not live to see the day his beloved temples would be wrested from state control. He passed away in 2015. Governments of just 10 states control more than 110,000 Hindu temples. Tamil Nadu temple trusts own 478,000 acres of temple land. Tamil Nadu government alone controls 36,425 temples and 56 mutts. For Karnataka, the figure is 34,558. Is this secularism? The communist state of Kerala has 5 Devaswam boards: Travancore, Guruvayur, Cochin, Malabar, and Kudamankam. Together they manage 3,058 temples. The communists, for whom religion is supposedly the opium of the masses, are controlling Hindu temples and their boards, appointing board members on their whim and fancy. Many either belong to the Communist Party or are card-carrying members of it. Why? What business is it of the state to levy an administrative charge from anywhere between 5% to 21% on Hindu temples in the name of audit? What business is it of the state to dictate how many times a puja is to be conducted and who is to conduct it and who is qualified to be the priest and what is going to be the procedure for worship? What business is it of the state to control tens of thousands of acres of temple land and then send rent for it? The loss to Hindu temples on account of this itself is estimated over decades to be in lakhs of crores. According to activist and litigant T.R. Ramesh, the Tamil Nadu government that should be earning a minimum of 6,000 crores per annum from the 2.44 crore square feet of temple land it controls. It earns a mere 58 crores, not even 1%. Kapileswarar temple is one of the richest temples in Tamil Nadu, owning more than 600 acres of prime property in Chennai. State records show it has 473 defaulters, with most of its land now encroached. And this is just one state. And because of this loss in revenue generation, Hindu temples are not able to spend money on what they'd really like to spend money on. Opening up Ved Pathshalas, schools, colleges, Goshalas, fellowships and scholarships, orphanages, Hindu cultural and religious centers, all things and causes that other religions and their places of worship spend their money on unencumbered. Only in India can you step aside and watch as the state appoints non-Hindus, Muslims like Fareed Hakim, Christians like Vangalapudi Anita, on boards that control Hindu temples. Only here will we remain silent as temple idols are stolen, temple property auctioned, a whole temple-driven ecosystem and way of life dismantled, bit by bit, brick by brick. Assault on temples has turned into an assault on Hinduism itself. Imagine a Hindu priest or a politician controlling and dictating how St. Francis Church or the Jama Masjid should be run. If that happens, perhaps our judiciary would indeed conduct a midnight hearing crying death of secularism. And the funny thing is, the very same turnips who call India a Hindurastra are totally silent on state control of Hindu places of worship. They never stop to ask, how on earth is this secularism? You can provide Hajj subsidy for decades, use taxpayers' money to host grand iftar parties, fund AMU that has only 1.4% Dalit students and 0.25% Dalit teachers, plunder state coffers to pay monthly salaries to tens of thousands of Maulvis, ask government-run UGC to fund minority institutions that keep 50% seats reserved for Christians, step in to overturn a Supreme Court judgment just to appease Muslims, leech thousands of crores exclusively from Hindu temples, control tens of thousands of acres of Hindu temple land, spend hundreds of crores of taxpayers' money for the Kartarpur corridor. And all this is the state not interfering or succumbing to the demands of religion. All this is secularism. The great Mahakaleshwar temple, its revenue and realty, is tightly controlled by the state government through the Mahakaleshwar Mandir Act, 1982. From appointing pujaris down to even the size of the prasadam laddu. Tirupati's hundi collection since April 22 alone are rupees 700 crores. Now the government valuation of its properties is out. 7,123 acres valued at 85,705 crores. But secularism means this temple comes under the Religious Institutions and Charitable Endowments Act. Until a High Court order of 6 months ago, Andhra Pradesh Hindu Religious Institutions Act used to force temples earning 5 lakhs or more to pay 21.5% of their income to the endowments department, no questions asked or entertained. Now the state has issued orders to set up Dharmika Parishad with draconian powers to form temple trust boards and extend land lease. Is this secularism? More than 2 years have gone by since the Tamil Nadu government informed the Madras High Court that 11,999 temples under its control do not have enough money to perform even a single puja. But then again, I ask, largely overriding the Supreme Court verdict If the Congress can bring in a legislation to control Hindu temples in 1959, one that still stands, why couldn't the BJP, why couldn't Modi bring in a legislation to override it in the last 8 years? Why has the Modi government brought in even more Hindu temples under state control than was achieved by the previous dispensation? Why? Why does the Modi government gloat on constructing temple corridors like the one in Kashi at the cost of 350 crores when instead of offering this Kool-Aid to gullible Hindus, it could relinquish control over Hindu temples and allow the latter to fund hundreds of such corridors over the length and breadth of the entire country? As far as I'm concerned, bless you. As far as I'm concerned, a Hindu temple should be publicly listed as a company. After all, it supplies a product that people buy, peace of mind and reassurance. And unlike other companies that need to constantly refine or come up with better and newer products, a temple's product hasn't changed in a millennium and never will. Indians should be able to buy stake in the temple and make the temple richer. The richer it becomes through public trading, the more it will do for the society, schools, hospitals, roads, orphanages, pathshalas, housing, and the more it does for the society, the more it will garner donations. With the temple being publicly listed, the ready excuse of the Modi government that who will control the temple after we relinquish control becomes untenable. Let the government tax the temple's wealth, no issues. But at least the wealth generated by the temple will belong to the temple. At least then the Hindus will not be so blatantly discriminated against in their own country.